Chapter 8 of the Wiley Cat VRC book discusses the concepts of parajumbles. The basic concept is that treat parajumbles like reading comprehension. Instead of a passage, it is a para. And the other important concept is learn to read with the eye of a writer. Understand, get into the mind of the writer as to how he would have, why is he using this, trying to create a sense of drama here, why is he using parallel grammatical structures, is he trying to create a sense of irony? So you have to understand why, how a writer would start his thought process and what would make a good concluding sentence given the context. So we will look at all these aspects very shortly. So straight away, here is the summary of guidelines for unraveling jumbled paras. Normally, good writers are told to put the weight of the message in front. That means state up front what you want to say and then get down to it. Don't beat about the bush, right? So normally a good starting sentence could have these aspects. A good starting sentence is one that makes an assertion or states a generalization or the main point. So a good starting sentence could start with the universalization of primary education is essential for economic growth. So, and then he starts giving his reasoning. Or a good starting sentence is that which is attention grabbing. He'll use some rhetorical device to catch your attention. You see, it's all a fight for eyeballs. So, attention grabbing sometimes arouse curiosity or interest. He may say something, leave you wondering as to what is coming next, and then he unveils it after in the second or the third sentence. So it could be that way as well. A good starting sentence sometimes could have a time, date, name, etc., which he is then going to explain. Maybe a book's name, a movie's name, a personality's name, a time period of history. So these are just some ideas as to what a good starting sentence may look like. So your ability, especially in TETA questions, when you're looking at those questions, trying to, as you read, you try to make connections, parallelly see how could he have started, what do you think in this, how will he end? So these three things should be constantly working. Starting, how are they linked, and the end. That has to be constantly working. So you have to have a feel for what a good starting sentence would look like, getting into the mind of the writer as you are reading his particular text. Then, of course, you are all told that grammatical clues help you track the development of a writer's thought flow. And the most important grammatical clues are where you link back. You say something, so a person says one thing, then in the next sentence he links back to it, then next sentence he links back to that, and by linking, so like a chain, so each sentence is like chained to the next, to the next, to the next, grammatically, right? This is how it's supposed to work. So pronouns and their noun reference are crucial to be able to see that it here refers to that, what has come before. So, among all the words for linking back, these 7 words that I've given are the most frequently used. That's why I've given you in bold. A lot of times I have found these clues as the perfect clues. So, such, it, this, that, these, those are demonstrative adjectives, etc., which are very often used. And among them, this is an omnibus. You can say a lot of things and then say this does not mean that. This can refer to the whole development of ideas in the last three sentences also. So this need not refer to just one thing in a previous sentence. It can refer to the whole set of ideas we have discussed so far. It again is very specific. Such is very specific. That generally is very specific. Those are specific. Now, articles is something which again most of you don't note this. The is a crucial link. He may start by saying an economy, etc., etc. Then later says this will help improve the economy. Now, an economy is mentioned, then he is mentioned the economy. Now, the economy will only come after when when he's introducing a thing, you'll use the indefinite pronoun because it has not been mentioned before, so you're introducing it. Later, having introduced, you will refer to it as the, right? Or he would have said something, then he says, the softening of Washington stand. So wherever you come across a the, that means it's talking about something specific, referring back to something he said. So from now onwards, the should become a very crucial clue to look for. Then obviously focusing, emphasizing verbs and rhetorical effects that you create. Crucially, comment adverbs, use of comment adverbs, right? Importantly, so by this he's trying to emphasize. Plus, only, even, also, or to, then correlative conjunctions, not only but also, not but, neither nor, both and so on, either or. So all these are language components which help you either focus, emphasize, or create some rhetorical effect. One of the most, again, common things people do is repetition of words and phrases, right? For emphasis. And then, of course, it helps you link back. They all get linked. Then, parallel grammatical structures, where the same kind of sentence with different words is repeated. So, we'll see examples of all these as we proceed. So, earlier we saw good starting sentence, then grammatical clues for linking back. Now, here are grammatical clues for making connections and transitions. How you connect one with the other, how you shift from in time and space with now, then, etc. Contrast, obviously, but, although, and so on and so forth. Similarly, sometimes a similar neglect. So, similar means he's referred to something similar to that. Then, obviously, present arguments, which we've already seen in critical reasoning. There are some words that you can clearly see that this must be the premise, this must be the conclusion emerging from it. But most of the times you will not find arguments in parajumbles. They're just to complete the whole summary of guidelines, because you could also, there could be some parajumbles with a specific argument, and you could clearly see. See, I could make a parajumble out of a critical reasoning question, and there it may be stated in a very methodical way with a conclusion emerging, right? My experience has been that wherever there's been in cat parajumbles or therefore, thus, etc., that has never been the concluding sentence of that para. It has always been either second or third. It has not been the first, of course, but it has never been the fourth or fifth, depending on what kind of parajumble it is. So it's never been at the end. So don't look for therefore, thus, as this must be the conclusion. Don't take it for granted. Don't follow any rules. So all these guidelines are being given to convince you that you are not to follow any rules given by anybody, including me. Even if by mistake, if anything sounds like a rule here, you are not to treat it like a rule. It at best is a guideline, and you have to see in that context how it is flowing. Right? Keep an open mind. Multitask in a parajumble, your mind has to work starting, ending, in between, how are linked. Oh, ये तो threesome बन रहा है. Oh, ये two are mandatory links, etc., etc. So mind should be working like that. And simultaneously, you're also looking for a good concluding sentence, right? So sometimes a concluding sentence clearly emerges at summing up the main point. Sometimes he ends on a very emphatic note or with a note of finality about it. You can feel the very sound, a short, crisp sentence to end the sentence. Sometimes before itself he has completed what he has to say, and towards the end he just gives a passing comment about what he feels about what he has already said, as a thought which he wants you to think about at the end. So these are broad guidelines. Don't treat them as rules. Be flexible. Rely on your own brains. Rely on your reading comprehension. Rely on your ability to read with the eye of a writer, where you're trying to see how the writer would have most likely started it with, most likely how will he conclude, right? If this is the flow working out so far. So it has to be like tentative. It's like solving a puzzle. Okay. So a para-jumble is comparable to a LR problem. So the best way I know of teaching para-jumbles is by doing actual questions, because guidelines and all, no, they're good on paper, but actually doing it is what is important. How should your mind work? And theta questions leaves the whole thing wide open, so you have to be totally open to what is happening, right? So here, as you read, you need not start with ABCD and then try to link up. You can just let me go to C. It is the interactive presence of these two kinds. Okay, these, good, noted. So there are two kinds of deprivation, being low caste and being female. Okay, that massively impoverishes women from the less privileged or the poor classes. Okay, good. So he's talking about deprivations and how low class and female can impoverish women's lives. Now, let's see D, a congruence of class deprivation and gender discrimination. Okay, so this probably is linked to that, because there also is talk of low caste and female. So low class means poor. So congruence of class deprivation, that means you're not in high middle class, and gender discriminations of female can blight the lives. Now blight is a crop disease. So it has become a verb in the English language meaning spoil, or uh, harm the lives of poorer women very severely. So these two problems, that they're from lower caste and they happen to be women, is a problem. Let's see E. Gender is certainly a contributor to societal inequity, but it does not act independently of class. Now, when you come here, you suddenly realized that you're talking of inequality in society, and gender means male or female. And he's saying that is certainly a contributor, but it does not act independent of class. That means class matters, right? So you have to see women low class, women middle class, women high class. Probably that's what he's saying. Okay, so having seen this, but E sounds like a good concluding or starting sentence, because it's making an assertion. It's certainly this thing, but not this. So when he's saying not this, means he'll probably start with E and then continue. So let's go back a bit. Right now you're open. You have seen CDE, women low class and all is being spoken. Let's come to A. Similarly, turning to caste. So similarly means from something in a similar way is turning to caste. Even though being lower caste is undoubtedly a separate cause of disparity, right? Men, women, all alike. If you are lower caste, you are discriminated against. Its impact is all the greater when the low caste families also happen to be poor. So, caste and class, poor means class. So, caste and class together make it even worse. So, caste is coming in A. Belonging to a privileged class can help a woman to overcome many barriers that obstruct women from less thriving classes. So, again, women and class. So, now you got an idea. So, I would say we should start with E. Gender is certainly a contributor to societal inequality, but it does not act independently of class. So, from E, let's go to say D has deprivation, then these two kinds of deprivation. So DC is kind of mandatory pair. C has to come after D. So let's say E after that D, a congruence of class deprivation, that means being low caste, and gender discrimination means being female, can blight the lives of poorer women very severely. Poor class women, gender, so okay, it is the interactive presence of these two kinds of deprivation. So, two clearly given in D. So, DC now, as far as you are concerned, is a mandatory pair, being low class and being female, that massively impoverishes women from the less privileged classes. So, EDC. Belonging to a privileged class can help a woman to overcome many barriers that obstruct women from less thriving classes. This sounds a little odd here, because this again is talking of class and women, while A is talking about similarly turning to caste. So that means first he has to finish class and gender, then he goes on to caste. So A will come at the end. But where does B fit in? So you got E, you got DC, and A at the end. E in the starting, A at the end, DC together. Should B come after DC or before? Because after C you say higher class. Now you've been talking of poor class and miserable, so you're all talking negative, how bad both this can happen. Then suddenly you're trying to say that a woman from a privileged class can this thing. Similarly turning to caste. Now for after this, similarly turning to caste after B doesn't make sense. Because then you'll try to, similarly will sound as if it's linked with B. So B must come earlier. So E, gender is certainly a contributor to societal inequality, but it does not act independent of class. Belonging to a privileged class can help a woman to overcome many barriers that obstruct women from less thriving classes. Having got this out of the way, then D, a congruence of class deprivation and gender can blight the lives of poor women. It is the interactive presence of these two that does this. Similarly, turning to caste, being low caste and poor is a bad situation. So, final answer is E B, B for Bombay, E B D C A. So, this is how your mind is working. Where should it start? Where should it end? What are the links? So the only real link we found was in DC. The other links were ideational links. Idea, gender class, caste class. So ideas, linking ideas is a more surer way. Don't only rely on grammar. Grammar and combination of ideas, RC, thinking how the writer would have said it, all that together is the way to solve para jumbles. Okay, let's come to the next example. Again, let's start with E here. You don't have to. Representative democracy is a messy business, and the CEO of the White House does not like a legislature of second guessers and time wasters. So you're talking about probably the President of America, CEO of the White House. Then you go back up. Bush was not fighting just the Democrats, right? Then you see in B, at times he was fighting the entire Congress. You know, Democrats is the opposition party. George Bush was from the Conservative Party, and Democrats was the opposition party. and Congress is the American parliament, right? So D and B clearly appeals to you. Now, this is what I mean by repetition of words of parallel grammatical structure. Now, just see how it sounds. Bush was not fighting just the Democrats. At times, he was fighting the entire parliament. So, DB, mandatory link straight away, parallel grammatical structures. Not fighting, at times he was fighting this, right? Okay. After that, Bush. So from Bush you have gone to he. Then would you come back to Bush immediately? Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. Okay, what does they say? He felt justified in bypassing Congress altogether on a variety of moves. So at times he was fighting the entire Congress. In which way was he fighting the entire Congress? A seemed to make it clear. So while DB has parallel connection, parallel sentences make a mandatory pair, after B, A also comes naturally. So DBA becomes a three sentences tied together perfectly, right? Bush was not just fighting the Democrats, at the time he was fighting the entire Congress. He felt justified in bypassing Congress altogether on a variety of moves. See, in the presidential form of system, he can bypass parliament. He's got many executive powers which our prime minister doesn't have, right? So DBA now clearly establishes now where DBA will come. How do you start? Can you start by C then? Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. And then say DBA. Bush was not fighting this, at times he was fighting this, he felt justified. That doesn't make sense. So C doesn't make a good starting sentence. E. Representative democracy is a messy business and a CEO does not like this. Then you come to Bush was not fighting just the Democrats. So that also doesn't make sense. So maybe DBA is the best way to start because a writer would like to have something attention grabbing straight away. DB is attention grabbing. That's why parallel grammatical structures fighting. Bush is fighting the opposition, fighting the parliament. So this obviously arouses, I mean, it perks up your ears. What is he saying? So it arouses curiosity, interest. Okay. So DBA have to come together. So let's say now you said DBA, he felt justified in bypassing. Uh, After that, should C come or E? Suppose we put C, DBAC. Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. That is why he was fighting. That's in a way trying to sum up saying that's why he was fighting the Democrats, Congress, it's a bypassing Congress because he felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. And then you end with a representative is a messy business and a CEO does not like this. Now, ending with such a long sentence, uh, it's better to put E earlier and C later. So DBA, it starts with DBA as a threesome, which we have seen is knit together, right? You can't separate, shove anything in between DBA. And then, you see, he felt justified in bypassing Congress and then take a little diversion to kind of sum up. Representative democracy is a messy business, and the CEO, whom we have talked about just now, a CEO of the White House, does not like a legislature. That means the Congress, which is the legislature, the parliament, of second guessers and time wasters. Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. Now, C sounds like a more emphatic concluding sentence after E. And you come back to Bush. So you started with Bush, then you said in D, then you said he was fighting in B, he felt justified in A, then you make a general statement and finally come back to Bush. Bush felt he had a mission to restore power to the presidency. So C sounds like the perfect concluding sentence in this particular case, right? Seeing the others available and so everything is contextual. So your final answer therefore is D, B, A, E, C. Okay. So now at random, let's start with A. Events intervened in the late 1930s and 40s. Germany suffered from over-branding in inverted commas. So when anything is inverted commas means it has a special meaning, right? So you'll have to guess that later. The British used to be fascinated by the home of Romanticism. So Germany is mentioned. Romanticism was that movement of literature and in the arts, which started in Germany and during I think the Renaissance period, if I remember correctly. So Britain used to be fascinated by Germany, basically. So home of Romanticism, because Germany we've already spoken. But unification used to be, but your reunification and the government move to Berlin has prompted Germany to rethink again about its image. Okay, so you're all aware that Germany was divided into two after World War II. There was the West Germany, East Germany. East Germany under the Soviet Union bloc, West Germany under the Western Democratic Western Union, the Great Western Past, which used to be called the First World, and Soviet Union and Communist World was called the Second World, and India and other countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America were called the Third World. So Germany has reunified; its government has moved to Berlin, right? So see, okay, let's see. So something is happening in Germany, which we are talking about, and about the British being fascinated by Germany. The first foreign package holiday was a tour of Germany organized by Thomas Cook in 1855. Okay, so now there is some date here, and there are some dates given in A, so D and A probably have a link. Then, since when? Since 1855 or since 30s, 40s, Germany has been understandably nervous about promoting itself abroad. So nervous about promoting itself. C says think again about its image. So that means earlier they were nervous about promoting the country abroad and now they are rethinking the image. So C will come sometime after E. So these kind of LR things you are writing on a site, on a piece of paper. As you are thinking, you are writing down. Okay. Like when you read a LR question, you write down points, right? Okay, so image of Germany. So image obviously of tourist package because tourism. We are talking of first tour of Germany organized. So let's B probably is the starting sentence since others events intervene, but etc etc. D if you start with the first tour started here, then that doesn't really. But let's start with B. The British used to be fascinated by the home of Romanticism, used to be in the past. Very good. After that, D. So the first foreign package holiday, that means the Britishers are foreigners to Germany. So the first foreign package holiday was a tour of Germany. So tourism started with Thomas Cook as a travel agent in 1855, and because British were fascinated with Germany, the very first foreign package holiday was a tour to Germany. So B and D now make sense that you should start with B, then comes D. And there's a date given. So after D, A makes sense because events intervened from 1855, right? Mid of 19th century to virtually mid of 20th century. So events intervened, and in the late 30s and 40s. So now we know what happened in late 30s and 40s. The rise of Nazism in the 30s, and in the 40s, World War II, and the extermination of the Jews under the Nazi regime. So Germany suffered from overbranding. Now, overbranding means it suffered from overbranding as a tourist destination. Now, who would like immediately after World War II was over, who would have liked to go to Germany as a tourist? That same Germany where the Nazi party killed 6 million Jews in concentration camps spread all over Europe, that cruel kind of system, right? So, I mean, people hated Germany, considered it an evil power. So, it was branded, over branding here refers to that it was so over branded that nobody would ever want to go there as a tourist destination. So BDA 1855 events intervene, and in this happened. But today, when now we are in, let's say this comes takes us reunification. When did it happen? 1989, the Berlin Wall was broken down, and after that, so early 90s, reunification of Germany is happening. Federal government has come back to Berlin. World War II now is a distant memory, right? People have forgotten about World War II, and Germany has otherwise become a great economic power, and now it's also united. So everybody is looking forward to Germany taking its renewed role in the world affairs now that has become a powerful nation again after being destroyed in World War II. Right, so now Berlin, so this has prompted Germany to think again about its image. Its earlier image was evil power, which started the World War II and killed so many people, right? The whole World War II, 50 million people died. So now they're thinking of changing their image, and so where were we? BDA, and oh, E we have left out somewhere. Since then, Germany has been understandably nervous. So since when? Since it suffered from overbranding. So DBAEC, right? Because E is since 1940s, since the World War, and it got a bad name, so they've been understandably nervous about promoting itself as a tourist destination. So again, I'll repeat DBAE, and then finally coming to C. But now, he's not said now, but let's say, but after reunification and this movement, Germany now is thinking again. And by the way, for your information, today Berlin is the heart of culture and attracts the maximum tourists, and especially those looking for, who are culture vultures, who want to, know all about culture, etc. So this is how your mind works. Now, obviously, in this case, you required some background knowledge. If you didn't have that, you would not have been able to make the links that I have made. Now, if you follow some formulas, chronological, and I don't know, I wouldn't know how to go about following any method that you've been taught. But this is the only way I know how to go about it. So that's the only thing I can teach you. That do RC. Okay, let's have a look. So all theta para jumbles earlier used to have 5 sentences. Let's say 2017. Then it came down to 4 sentences. But I am going into some of the older CAT para jumbles without the options, right, and treating them as theta questions. So here is one with 6 sentences. So anyway, just bear with me. The aim is to learn how to do RC. That is the whole aim. And 4 will be simpler than 5, and 5 will be simpler than 6. But let's have a look. So having a strategy is a matter of discipline. Okay, sounds like a good starting sentence. It involves the configuration. So it referring to strategy. It involves the configuration of a tailored value chain that enables a company to offer unique value. Okay, it could be referring to strategy. It requires a strong focus on profitability and a willingness to make tough trade-off. Tough word, tough trade-off means matter of discipline. So C seems to not only it matching strategy, linking with strategy, the willingness to make tough trade-offs in choosing what not to do. So that's a matter of discipline. So that cap fits with the idea of discipline. Then D says strategy goes far beyond the pursuit of best practices. So this probably will come later. A company must stay the course even during times of upheaval while constantly improving and extending its distinctive positioning. Positioning in marketing is, let's say, you positioned yourself, like I positioned my Wiley book as for the above average student, right? Vis-a-vis other books in the market. So that's how you position it for which targeted segment, etc., etc., right? So E again must stay the course, means must stick to whatever it has planned. So this again talks of discipline. So you find that B and E have that discipline thing there. F talks of when a company's activities fit together. Now earlier tailored value chain and then fitting together. So all this chain. So B and F probably have a link as a self-reinforcing system. Any competitor wishing to imitate a strategy must replicate the whole system. Okay. So let's say it starts with A. Having a strategy is a matter of discipline, right? And then it. So AC, it requires a strong focus. So strategy requires a strong focus on profitability and a willingness to make tough trade-offs in choosing what to do. A company must stay the course, means be disciplined and stick to its plans even during this, etc., etc. So A, C, E become linked in because of the discipline aspect. And then a B, tailored value chain that enables a company to offer unique value. And F, if it has a tailored unique value, if everything fits together, competitor will have to imitate the whole system to be able to, beat that strategy. So BF also ideationally, RC wise match, BF. So where does D come in? So we have ACE. We've got ACE at the starting. Then probably we should fit in D. Then the second aspect. So one aspect, having a strategy is a matter of discipline. That is explained in C and E. Then second point, strategy goes far beyond the pursuit of best practices. It involves. So best practices are, uh, like this, follow this. But B is beyond that. It involves the configuration of a tailored value chain, right? So that the company can offer unique value. So it is beyond best practice. So B seems to be good after D. So DBF. ACE, A point number one, supported by, let's say, CE, and then D second point, supported by BF. So this is how the RC unfolds and reveals the flow of the thought process. Okay, let's try the fifth example. So again, let's start in the beginning. Experts such as so and so reckon that only such a full hearted leap will allow the world to cope with the mass motorization that will one day come to China and India. So one is it sounds like some futuristic forecast. So maybe A would come at the end. So you get a feel plus the word such. So what are the seven magic words? Such, it, this, that, these, those, the. So circle such. Keep that in mind. There is something, some full-hearted leap which he is referring to, which is required to cope with the mass motorization, means when China and India, more people start buying cars, etc., etc., right? So it's probably about cars. Then long sentence. Let's read the chota sentences first. That is D. That is twice as good as the internal combustion engine, but only 5%. Now, what is that? That refers to something. Let's see. E. Allowing for resources needed to extract hydrogen from hydrocarbon, oil, gas, the fuel cell has an efficiency of 30%. That is twice as good. So, fuel cell for as a source of energy for cars. Right. So E and D clearly have a link. Let us see C. In theory, once all the bugs have been sorted out, fuel cells should deliver better total fuel economy than any existing engines. Now, having just glanced around the sentences, C clearly emerging as a starting sentence. That fuel cells are at a stage of development now where some bugs are left, and once they are sorted out, it will deliver good fuel economy, much better than all our petrol and diesel engines, right? So, having started with C, naturally you will come to E. So, allowing for the resources needed to extract oxygen, etc. Sorry, hydrogen, because you require hydrogen for fuel cells. The fuel cell has an efficiency of 30%. So, then ED, that 30%, that is referring to that fuel efficiency of 30% of a fuel cell. Now, that efficiency of 30% is twice as good as the internal combustion engine. That means internal combustion engine has a fuel efficiency of 15%, but only 5% point better than a diesel hybrid. Hybrid is diesel and electrical, right? So diesel electrical has 25, so 30 is 5% more than that, and internal combustion engine diesel or petrol has about 15%, so 30% is twice of that. So CED clearly makes sense. And then A obviously we thought would make a good concluding sentence. Now let's read B, which is the longest sentence. But once, so CDE, so that shows fuel efficiency, bugs are sorted out, has efficiency of 30, which is better than what we already have. But once this problem of hydrogen is sorted out, but once hydrogen is being produced from biomass and extracted from this, right, the way will be open for a huge reduction in carbon emissions from the whole system. Then experts say that only such a full-hearted leap. So full-hearted leap is this major breakthrough in B of hydrogen being produced from biomass extracted from underground coal and made from water through electrolysis probably, separating oxygen and hydrogen and other things, right? That is when such a full-hearted leap will allow the world to cope with the so much high population of China and India and so many more people driving cars. So it'll be crazy, that much more emissions, right? And more pollution and more greenhouse gases. So we need a clean fuel and we need a efficient fuel. So fuel cells was touted as one such energy source for cars. So CDE, so here such and that becomes so crucial. So those among those, 7 words, such and that become such crucial links. So CDEBA is your final answer. Right, question 6. Now here between two, so here starting and concluding sentences are given to you, 1 and 6. Within those you have to fit A, B, C, D. Now let's just see whether this makes it simpler or tougher or whatever, right? So picture a termite colony occupying a tall mud hump on an African plain. So he is inviting you to see this picture of a termite colony. A. Hungry predators often invade the colony. Now, the colony may refer to, so the colony will obviously come after a colony because already introduced in the beginning, and unsettle the balance again the. So these two the's the colony, yes, matches with, so it can link with one, but the balance cannot link with one. That means there has to be some sentence where there's some kind of balance been mentioned. So we got to see that. Let's see other chota one is D. So shorter sentences, first look at them. So this is just a random approach. It's not some guideline here, right? It's just so that you waste less time before you come to your first link and then you link further, etc. So D, the hump is alive with worker termites and soldier termites going about their distinct kinds of business. Now the hump, clearly the, and one refers to a tall mud hump. So clearly D must come after one. Picture a termite colony occupying a tall mud hump. The hump is alive with worker and soldiers going about their distinct business. Okay, so straight away one after one D. Then let's see others. C. But his fortunes are presently restored. Presently here means are immediately restored because the immobile queen walled in well below ground level lays eggs not only in large enough numbers but also in the varying proportions required. Okay, let's see what B says. The colony flourishes only if the proportion of soldiers to workers remains roughly the same so that the queen and the workers can be protected by the soldiers and the queen and the soldiers can be serviced by the workers. So that talks of the balance which we saw in A. So the balance, so A has to come after B. So we have seen after one you have D because of the hump, a hump and the hump. So the is such a crucial link, and the hump is alive with this. And after D, talking of the balance in that hump. So after D, then B, the colony flourishes only if the proportion of workers and all that remain the same. Then what happens? Hungry predators often invade and unsettle the balance. So DBA. And if they have unsettled the balance, which was referred to, B refers to the balance, but its fortunes are immediately restored. So DBAC, predator has come and soldiers are dying, so balance has been unsettled. But what does the queen do? Queen lays additional eggs in large quantities and in the varying proportions required. So if more soldiers are dying, she'll lay more soldier eggs to make up for the shortage of soldier populations. And so D mm, B A C. DBAC is your final answer, and it ends up by saying, how can we account for her mysterious ability? Her referring to the queen termite in B, because we have finished with B. So how can we account for the queen's mysterious ability to respond like this to events on a distant surface? She is underground. She doesn't know how many soldiers are dead, but she knows some halchal is going around, right? So she is producing eggs in proportion so that those dead soldiers can be replenished with more soldiers. So this is how your mind should work, and again how this is an example of where how the plays such a crucial role in helping you link sentences together. Okay, question 7. Call it the third wave sweeping the Indian media. Call what? So it probably it will not. It will come later sometime. Look around you and you will find a host of deals that have been inked and are ready to be finalized. Okay, what deals, what we don't know. Let's start with, let's see D. Then the media barons wrested back control from the editors, turned marketing. So this again sounds unconnected. The first came. So call it the third wave. The first came. That means the first wave came. Now we are talking of some third wave. So E sound, so at least some link we've established. Now let's read carefully. The first came, that means the first wave came with those magnificent men in their mahogany chambers who took on the world with their mighty fountain pens. So pens are mightier than the sword, kind of a thing. So basically, the first wave came when magnificent men, etc., with their pens, has to be the editors in a media house. Editors are the strong people there, the important people. So first wave was led by the editors. Then the media barons. Okay, this makes sense. Then maybe the second wave. Then the media barons, the owners of that media house, wrested back control from the editors. So they took back control from the editors and turned marketing warriors with the brand as their missile. Okay, so in the first wave, editors were the boss. Then there came a second wave where the media barons took the control from the editors and they became marketing warriors with branding their media house like the Times of India or the Republic or whatever. Look around you, you will find a host of deals that are being inked and are ready to be. So this doesn't make any sense. Now they are starring in a new role. So the first came, then this happened. Now they are starring. They referring to media barons, right? So EDB. So now the media barons are starring in a new role as suave deal makers who are in a hurry to strike alliances and agreements. Look around you, deal. So BC. So EDCB. Perfect. So first came, then the media barons. Now they are doing this, and look around you, the deals. So where does A fit in? E D, B, C. At the end, can I say, call it the third wave sweeping the Indian media? That this, now that deal makers, I mean, the media barons have become deal makers, this is the third wave. See all the deals being signed, right? Let us call this the third wave sweeping the Indian media. Does A make a good sentence like this? Do you think the writer would have written it like that? So think with the eye, read with the eye of the writer. A writer would have started by creating, attention grabbing, by creating curiosity or interest. Call it the third wave sweeping the Indian media. And then go flashback to the first wave came when this happened, the second wave came, then this happened. Now, in the third wave, they are doing the deal making. See all the deals being made. So this is most probably how he has gone. So it can be used for even referring forward. So when you say call it the third wave, means I'm going to tell you what it refers to. Hold on. So you are referring forward. You'll come to it later. So call it the third wave sweeping the Indian media. First happened this, then happened this. Now this is happening. This is what you should call the third wave. So therefore, your answer is A, E, D, B, C. So this is an example where it. So don't follow any rules that it has or it cannot start with it. So you don't know how to go about it. It can start with it. So writing is a craft. There are no rules that bind you. Writers use the skill to create the effect. So don't you think it's so beautiful? Like in a movie, you see present, camera on present, and then flashback. So that clearly that kind of cinematography is doing it here in writing. Okay, right. Question 8. This 8, therefore, the fundamental concept. Okay. Then this again. So maybe it should start. This is a short sentences, so maybe easier to do. The fundamental concept, colon. Prices are not predictable, but the mathematical laws of science can describe their fluctuations. Okay, you could start like that. Then, therefore, or it emerged, this concept emerged from the mathematics, or this is now ortho. This can refer to the fundamental concept, saying this is now orthodoxy to which I subscribe up to a point, or it emerged, this concept, it emerged from mathematics of chance and statistics, or this, if the this in E, this is how what business schools now call modern science was born. So this E doesn't seem to fit in with the concept, but others do. Okay, and where does therefore come? How does the risk is measurable and manageable? So this probably links with this D. Prices are not predictable, but the mathematical laws of science can describe their fluctuations. So once you know their fluctuations, otherwise, let's say investing in any market, stock market, commodity market, etc., etc., right? Prices are unpredictable, but you can say that it will now go down, it's gone up, so you can describe the fluctuations. That is why the risk in investing in financial and capital markets is measurable and manageable. So DC tend to make a mandatory pair. And now we are talking about finance. So how would you start it? Uh, let's start with A and C. This is now orthodoxy to which I subscribe up to a point. Can you start with the this? Yes, like it, this can also be used to refer forward. Can we start with B? It emerged from, or if we start with D, then you'll end up with D and C together. Therefore, the risk is measurable and manageable. And then you say it emerged from. After that, if you say this, doesn't make sense. But after C, if you say A, this is now orthodoxy. That yes, this fundamental concept is now orthodoxy to which I subscribe. I agree up to a point. So DCA can come. What about DCE? Therefore, the risk is measurable. This is how what so and so was born. This doesn't make sense. So E doesn't fit in. So DBA fit in, correct? Sorry, DCA, DC mandatory pair. After that, referring to this DC or this fundamental concept as orthodoxy at the end, uh, uh, you know, makes sense. DCA we have got. Now it emerged. What is it? The fundamental concept. Is it modern finance? There's another noun, modern finance. So maybe it is referring to modern finance. That modern finance emerged from mathematics of chance and statistics, and the fundamental concept of modern finance is this. Therefore, the risk is measurable, and this is now orthodoxy to which I subscribe. Like a passing comment at the end. We mentioned that authors sometimes finish what they have to say and then make a passing comment at the end. So now it suddenly comes to us that yes, we have to start with E. This is how what business schools now call modern finance was born. Modern finance का जन्म ऐसे हुआ. मॉडर्न फाइनेंस मैथमेटिक्स ऑफ चांस एंड स्टैटिस्टिक्स से इमर्ज हुई. फंडामेंटल कॉन्सेप्ट क्या था कि प्राइसेस प्रेडिक्टेबल नहीं है. Because modern finance is all about market, stock market, this market, commodity market, foreign exchange market, what have you, future market, derivative market, this, that, right? So prices predictable नहीं है, मगर probability से you can describe, with technical analysis you can describe the fluctuations. Therefore, risk is measurable and manageable. and this finishes the story. This is as a passing comment. ये एक orthodoxy means अभी सब मानते हैं as to be true. It's become an orthodoxy. It's nothing new now, right? To which I also agree, but up to a point. So last comment by him as a passing comment. So your answer is E, about modern finance. So he's arousing curiosity. मॉडर्न फाइनेंस का जन्म ऐसे हुआ, कैसे हुआ भाई, बता तो सही, अबे ठहर ना बताऊंगा. So this is used for referring forward, and then janam kaise hua, then he starts with B. It emerged from this fundamental concept ye hai, isliye so E, B, D, C, and passing comment at A as he signs off. That this is now orthodoxy, which I subscribe up to a point. Okay, let's look at example 9. To much of the labor movement, it symbolizes. So it kya hai? It symbolizes the brutality of the upper classes. Okay, so something like that. Okay. And to everybody watching, the current mess over fox hunting symbolizes. So something about fox hunting symbolizes the government's weakness. To fox hunting supporters, Labour. Now again in Britain you have the Conservative and the Labour Party, right? So Labour's 1991 manifesto commitment to ban fox hunting symbolizes the party's metropolitan roots and the hostility to the countryside. That means Labour Party is largely from cities and their focus is on cities. They don't have any love with countryside, so they are hostile to them. While fox hunting is a thing which people who live in the countryside love, going on their horses hunting for fox. Okay, small issues sometimes have large symbolic power. So this again is a grandiose kind of, an assertive statement, could come in the beginning, could end. To those who enjoy thundering. So clearly to A says to, and to, then to, E2. So let's start with D. Small issues sometimes have large symbolic power, right? And then where will you go? Which two will you go? So probably C, because you want to now introduce the basic topic, fox hunting. So small issues, fox hunting is not a big national issue, but it has large symbolic power. So after DC, two fox hunting supporters who are largely in the countryside, although rich people who have their mansions in the countryside, hunting is a great traditional hobby and pastime, right? Where they go fox hunting. So to supporters of fox hunting, the Labour Party's this commitment to ban it symbolizes this, right? Uh, then after C, what should come? Mm, just one sec. What about E? To those who enjoy thundering across the countryside in red coats, often foxes, fox hunting symbolizes the ancient roots of rural lives. Okay, let us say CE. Then you say to much of the labor movement it symbolizes. So you're shifting from labor manifesto to something else and back to labor, because and to everybody watching, B must come at the end. So you start with D, B must come at the end. We have to fit ECA somewhere in between, right? So let's again start. Small issues sometimes have large symbolic power. Let's now, because labor part, let us put them together and see how it sounds. So then we have E left. So to those who enjoy thundering across, means those who enjoy fox hunting. Fox hunting symbolizes the ancient rules of rural lives. Very good. So E becomes a good introductory sentence to the small issue that we are going to talk about, which is fox hunting. And this basically symbolizes the ancient roots of rural lives. especially to those who love this as a hobby. Then to fox hunting supporters, Labour's manifesto to ban it symbolizes this. To much of the labor movement as a whole, that is Labour's manifesto to ban, now you're talking of the labor movement as a whole, it symbolizes the brutality of the upper class. So labor movement is against those rich people who have big mansions going around killing bloody helpless animals, right? Cruelty to animals. So this makes sense. Oh, that is why they're trying to ban it. Okay. So fox hunting supporters think that Labour is trying to ban it is uh, their hostility to countryside and to much of the labor movement, the all supporters of the Labour Party. It symbolizes the brutality of the upper class, the bourgeoisie class. So Labour is more leftist, more, let's say, communistic, socialistic. And to everybody watching, the current mess, all the debate going on over fox hunting and banning it, symbolizes the government's weakness. That it is committed to ban, but it is not banning, so there's probably a mess, right? And government is weak enough not to be able to implement it, though they think it is brutal. I mean, the labor all people feel is brutal to animals of rich people, right? Who treat this as a great hobby, killing animals. So this is the flow. So D, E, uh, again, should it be CA or AC? You see, it has to end with B. So DE clear. Now B and to fox hunting supporters, this ban, it symbolizes. Now ban and maybe that government's weakness should come together. That means not being able to implement that ban. So it's better to have D, E, A, C, B. So to much of the labor movement, it symbolizes the brutality of the upper classes, and to fox hunting supporters on the other hand. So one spoken in favor, that means E first, those who love fox hunting, it symbolizes ancient roots of rural lives. Okay, so that's a good thing, positive side. Then the other side, opposite, EA, to much of the labor movement, it is brutality. Okay, EA. After that, again to supporters now, back to fox hunting supporters. So from E supporters to what the others say, back to supporters, right? And supporters say that this ban is shows the hostility to the countryside, to the rural lives, to the rural roots, etc. So you're alternating. So that pattern emerges if you put it this way. So D, E, then opposite to go to labor movement, A, then back to fox hunting supporters, C, and to everyone watching that it shows the labor government's weakness. So labor government must be in power when this was written, and that's why they have this manifesto to ban it. So this is the kind of effort required in RC. Now, don't try to solve para jumbles in a hurry. I mean, do fewer of them, but do them with RC. Otherwise, see, you have no option. In Theta, you have no option. And there are so many two this, two that. So, it took us some time to decide in which order. But if options were given, maybe it would have been easier. So, in Theta questions, you can't do it in a hurry. Okay, let's see question 10. Again, to be culturally literate is to possess the basic information needed to thrive in the modern world. Nor is it confined. What is it? It is by no means confined to culture. Okay, so it again we can't know, but it's not confined to culture, nor is it confined. So BC clearly shows let's say CB, not BC, but CB shows a clear mandatory pair because of parallel grammatical, right? So it is by no means confined to culture narrowly understood, nor is it confined to this. Quite the contrary. And then he'll say something contrary. Okay, to what? So it. Now what is it? Then we move further. D. Cultural literacy constitutes the only sure avenue of opportunity for disadvantaged children, the only reliable way of combating the social determinism that now condemns them. Determinism is again cause and effect relationship. So, social determinism would be that because they were born disadvantaged, children were born poor, they will remain disadvantaged throughout their life. So, a sure avenue of opportunity for them is to give them cultural literacy. So, this probably makes a good starting sentence. So, let's see. Let's see if we start with D. So, cultural literacy. Let us see the breadth of that information. Now, there is some information. Let us look. Information was in A. To be culturally literate. Okay, literacy A. To be culturally literate is to possess the basic information needed to thrive in the modern world. The breadth of that information. So, again, that is one of those seven magic words, right? Often used for linking back. So, A, E are crucially linked, and CB is linked. Where does D fit in? Suppose we start with D, that cultural literacy constitutes all this, and then to be culturally literate is to do this, so that's okay. And the breadth of that information is this, and it means cultural literacy is by no means confined to, or is it the information or what? What does it refer to? It refers to cultural literacy, or does it refer to that basic information? So it is, the information is by no means confined to culture narrowly understood as an acquaintance with the arts, nor is that information confined to one class. Quite the contrary. After quite the contrary, something must follow. What is that contrary? The contrary is cultural literacy constitutes the only sure avenue. Okay. So now, to me, it's better to start with A, E, C, B, D. So let's read it quickly. To be culturally literate is to possess the basic information needed to thrive in the modern world. Okay. So basic information is one key aspect, because after that, the breadth of that basic information is great. That means you have to know a lot to thrive in the modern world, extending over major domains of human activity from sports to science. That means you have to know a lot if you want to be culturally literate. You have to know sports, you have to know society, human behavior, philosophy, science, everything. So, all the major domains of human activity from science, from sports to science. This makes sense. So, having explained, then he is trying to show that it is not limited. So it again has to refer to that information, because the breadth of that information, and then that information is by no means confined to culture narrowly understood as an acquaintance with the arts. So it does not refer to cultural literacy, it refers to information. So therefore, A, E, C, B is your answer, and D comes at the end. So A, E, C, B, D is your answer. Now deciding it refers to cultural literacy or the basic information, that becomes a crucial thing here, because in a theta question linking this 5 could be difficult, right? So the only answer is random, proceed randomly, get some links together, try out some ways, not working, again try out, see better way to start, better way to end sometime, and then reach your final arrangement. Which sometimes, if you do it in too much of a hurry, it could be wrong. You may not have thought some aspect of that pattern. Question 11. A. When identity is thus defined by contrast, in inverted commas, divergence with the West becomes central. So you're moving slowly. Identity, we're talking of some identity defined by contrasting with some other identity, maybe. B is too long to read. Let's see. There is a similar neglect of Indian writing. So we're looking at C. There's a similar neglect of Indian writing on non religious subjects from mathematics, epistemology, and natural science to economics and linguistics. So, similar neglect, that means this has to link with some other neglect mentioned somewhere, right? Let's leave D again, which is longish. E. The exception is the Kama Sutra, in which Western readers have managed to cultivate an interest. So, if Kama Sutra is an exception, that means Western readers otherwise find probably Indian reading, because we saw that Indian writing something, similar neglect. So they don't find it interesting. They probably, and the exception to that is Kama Sutra. So the topic seems to be about writing, Indian writing. So let's come back to B. I'm just exploring randomly. Indian religious literature, such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Tantric texts, which are identified as differing from secular writings seen as Western. That means Bhagavad Gita and Tantric texts are treated as probably religious texts because they are identified as different from secular writings of and probably of Indian writers, which is seen as Western. That means if Indians write in a secular way, they are Western, right? Okay. The Indian religious literature, such as this, elicits much greater interest in the West. That means West prefer Indian religious literature like these things than the secular writing, which is like West only because it's similar to what they this thing, than do the other Indian writings, including India's long history of heterodoxy. So heterodoxy is going against the orthodox thinking, coming up with wide variety of opinions and views. So anyway, I don't know what he's talking about, but broadly, he's saying that Indian religious texts appeal more to the West than other Indian writings, which other secular means non-religious, which generally are seen as Western, because Western people write non-religious and explore different topics and ideas and philosophical schools, etc., etc. Okay, so this seems to be a good point. Then D, because these are which we didn't read because they were long, through selective emphasis that point out differences with the West, other civilizations can. So now it's beyond Indian only. Other civilizations can in this way. So in which way? That means he's done earlier. Be redefined in alien terms, which can be exotic, means foreign, and charming, or else bizarre and terrifying, or simply strange and engaging. So now let's try to link up. So let's say B is a, let's start with B because it makes a point that Indian religious literature elicits much greater interest in the West than do the other Indian writings. Now after this, can you put C? There is a similar neglect. Now there is some neglect of secular writings coming up in B. They differ from, so the religious writing will differ from that. That elicits much greater thing. So the word neglect will not be used for you to directly link up. You have to see if the idea of neglect is coming. So secular writings have been neglected by the West. They don't find those interesting. So BC make a good pair. There is a similar neglect of Indian writings. So Indian secular writings and then other Indian writings on non-religious subjects. So virtually is repeating that from mathematics, epistemology, and natural science to economics and linguistics. So maybe earlier writings he was referring to something else related to the long history of orthodoxy. So those writings are neglected. Similar neglect of again all these mathematics, epistemology, etc. So BC tends to, but exception is Kama Sutra. So BCE clearly makes a link. So you got that. That Kama Sutra, however, appeals to them because they find it interesting naturally. And therefore, now comes D through selective emphasis. So that means the Western reader, by the selective emphasis on the religious texts, and even and let's say Kama Sutra as well, which is not religious really, uh, those show how India is different from the West. Bhagavad Gita, Tantric texts say things. Why is it of interest to the West? Because it shows up differences with the West. Western don't have that stuff. They don't have a Kama Sutra, right? So this way the West can understand other civilizations and define them. They can say, oh, India is so exotic and charming. Or they can say these tantric texts are so bizarre and terrifying. What black magic is there, right? Or just think of them as strange and engaging. So this way West can, by selectively reading their writing which are different from Western, right, new things about the culture, they can then define them in those terms. They are neglecting all the other thinking of those nations, of all those civilizations. They are only seeing what is different from the West. Why don't you see what is similar? Then you'll see that we are just like you. We have the same thoughts as you. Plus, we have this additional stuff also. So, anyway, so Western readers tend to do that. Thus, identity. So, redefined in alien terms of D matches with. So, ending with a shorter sentence, clearly summing up what has been said. So, it follows from DA become a mandatory pair when identity is thus. Now, here is one example of a parajumble where thus comes in a concluding sentence, right? When identity is thus identified by contrast with West, divergence from the West becomes central. So that means that is their own criteria. I'll pick this up. Does it sound like Western? No. It sounds typically Indian, something religious, something strange about that country. Okay, then I'll read it. So, therefore, your answer here is you start with B, introduce the topic, then similar neglect of these subjects, also writings on these subjects, and Kama Sutra is the exception. So, CBE we saw goes together. And this is the way, in this way, you are doing selective emphasis and redefining other civilizations in alien terms. And A sums up what he has said in D. So this B, C, E, D, A is your answer. Now, can you see so far in 11 questions, there are so many variety of ways people have expressed, and sometimes even ideational links are difficult to, you have to fit into the context in which he is talking about. So RC, without RC you can't do it. There is hardly any grammar clue here except that thus, which happened to be, in a concluding sentence. So otherwise there's not much to help you link. So how will you go about it if you try to follow quick fixes or patterns? I don't understand. Question 12. So as you glance, you find 4 days later in early June, on June 12th. So let's come to the earliest time. Let's say C. In early June, PeopleSoft said that it would buy JD Edwards, a smaller rival. Okay. 4 days later, Oracle announced its own bid for PeopleSoft and invited the firm's board to a decision. So early June, PeopleSoft wanted to buy another company. 4 days later, Oracle now wanted to buy PeopleSoft itself and call them for a meeting. And then you talk of June 12th, E. So PeopleSoft turned Oracle down. That means Oracle's offer was refused by PeopleSoft. So could it be CAE? And then let's look at other. D says moreover, so let's go to B first. Furious that his own plans had been endangered, peoples of boss Craig Conway called Oracle's offer diabolical and its boss Larry Ellison a sociopath. So apparently, people's of boss reacted in a very agitated manner when Oracle, you know, uh, tried to, let's say, make a bid for PeopleSoft. So this is a reaction to, let's say, A. Moreover, said Conway, he could imagine no price or combination of price and other conditions to recommend accepting the offer. So B and D clearly go together. Now, so you could have CAEBD. So in early June, this happened. 4 days later, Oracle announced. On 12th June, people turned Oracle down. And then you explain why it turned down. Furious that his own plan, so this guy called all these names to that guy. He was very angry. And moreover, he said there's no price or condition I'll accept. Now, ending this way, why don't we try some better option? Let's say in early June he wanted to buy this, X wanted to buy Y. 4 days later, Z wanted to buy X. So furious that so X got furious. So X gave a mouthful to Z and said, we will not accept your offer. So BD. And then you say on June 12th, X turned Y down or X turned Z down. So E sounds like a better concluding sentence than D. So earlier we had CAEBD. Why not have CABDE? Right? Because E makes a better concluding sentence and emerges logically from the fact that people's of boss Craig Conway reacted in this kind of a hysterical manner. He started calling him names like diabolical, sociopath, etc. So there is a note of finality about E, something that closes the chapter. A chapter opened with C, and then A and a new chapter opened. E closes the new chapter. So that kind of a thing. So I would go for what sounds like a good concluding sentence and not conclude with D but conclude with E. So C, A, B, D, E. Let's look at the next question. Okay, let's look at question 13. Here you find that A has a name and again D has a name, Hoffman feels passionately. So B cannot be a good starting sentence. C cannot be because so he will come after Michael Hoffman has been introduced. Uh, E says something else. So let's start with A. Michael Hoffman, a poet and translator, accepts this sorry fact without approval or complaint. So now, though it has introductory material and appeals as a good starting sentence, but this sorry fact, that means there is some sorry fact which has been stated earlier, which this guy accepts. So, in which statement is the sorry fact? That thanklessness impossible, do not doubt him. That best translators poetry always fail. He acknowledges two. So, two means it has to come later than something else. So, let us look at E, which we have not read at all. In terms of the gap between worth and rewards, translators come somewhere near nurses and street cleaners. So worth of a nurse is very high, but reward she gets is a pittance. Similarly, street cleaners, their worth is very high. We would all fall ill if our street cleaners went on strike, but the rewards they get a very low pay. So in terms of gap between the worth and reward, nurses and cleaners are bad enough, translators somewhere are near them. That means translators also are not rewarded, and while their worth is very high. So this seems to be that accepts this sorry fact. So that means you start with E as a general statement, and then you talk of a poet and translator, Michael Hoffman. So EA therefore make a mandatory pair, right? So this sorry fact, the this, one of the 7 miracle words most often used. I'm again tending to get, like trying to give you quick fixes, but please rely on RC more than all these things. So EA, then then probably C, he acknowledges two. That means he accepts this, he acknowledges two. In fact, he returns to the point later that best translators of poetry always fail at some level. So while he accepts that worth and reward gap is very wide, he also acknowledges that translators and poets don't are not able to do the job properly, they fail also. So he acknowledges that aspect of their failure as well. So EAC, all three beautifully come together. Now, after that, let's look at Hoffman feels passionately about his work, and this is clear from his writings, but thanklessness and impossibility do not daunt him. So, can we, after EAC, say DB or should we say BD? So, let's look at how after EACB sounds. He acknowledges too that poets fail at some level, but thanklessness is the sorry fact that your worth is high, yet you don't get reward, so that is thanklessness. Impossibility, that means it's impossible for a translator to translate everything perfectly, so he must fail. So the idea of failure is covered in impossibility. Thanklessness is E, the failure part is mentioned in C. So both these both these aspects do not deter him or daunt him. He feels passionate about his work, and this is clear from his writings. So it should be BD, because so you should be able to link thanklessness to E, impossibility to C. That is where your RC comes in. Okay, and note another thing. He second sentence Michael Hoffman. Then he acknowledges too, right? Do not daunt him. And finally, he ends again with Hoffman feels passionate. Why can't he just say he? So there is a tendency in the last sentence to come back to the original person so that the link remains alive in the mind of the reader. That we are still talking about Hoffman, though we have mentioned a couple of things, but Hoffman is the guy we are talking about. So similarly, if you remember that Bush parajumble, Bush was not just fighting with the Democrats. At times, he was fighting with the Congress. He felt, you know, justified in bypassing Congress, etc. And at the end, then you again say Bush. After saying he, then at the end you again come back to Bush. Bush had a mission to restore power to the presidency. So a grandiose kind of an ending. Similarly, here Hoffman feels passionately about his work, and this is clear from his writing. So D, the sound of it makes a good concluding sentence, and especially with the repeat of the word Hoffman, so that the link in the reader's mind remains connected with what we started with. So this is how writers write. So sometimes you find patterns, but then another writer may not follow this pattern. If I give you, let's say, two para jumbles with a certain pattern, don't take it for granted that it'll always happen. It may not. A third guy may continue with he and end with he. He may not employ this, you know, referring to again the name at the end. Okay. So no rules. Guard against rules. Right. Second last question. We have total 15 questions, so we are on 14th question. Okay, let's read this. A starts with a but, B even. So C looks okay. Most of our traditional sources of information about the old kingdom are monuments of the rich like pyramids and tombs. Then houses in which ordinary Egyptians lived have not been preserved, and when most people died, they were buried in simple graves. We know infinitely more about the wealthy people of Egypt. So obviously, Old Kingdom refers to Egypt, right? Now, should we start with D or C or E? Uh, Let us see. Let us read E fully. We know infinitely more about the wealthy people of Egypt than we do about the ordinary people, as most monuments are made for the rich. So, all monuments like pyramids, tombs, you go there, you know how the rich lived. You don't know how the ordinary Egyptians lived. Having said this, then suppose he goes to D. Houses in which ordinary Egyptians lived have not been preserved, right? So only most monuments are made for the rich, and the houses have not been preserved. So most people died and they were buried in simple graves. And now all that with time, what happens is all archaeological evidence keeps going deeper and deeper because dust and other things fill up and cover up things, right? Even some small tombs could have been buried in sand or in dust now. So therefore, E, we know more about the wealthy people because monuments made for them. Houses in which ordinary Egyptian they were not preserved, and they were put in simple graves. That's why we don't know about ordinary people. And most of our traditional sources of information. Now we come to, so most monuments were made for the rich, and they are the sources of information. So most of our traditional sources of information about the old kingdom, that means Egypt. Now, why did he switch to old kingdom? Just to confuse us, to make the parajumble difficult? No, people have this intellectual habit of they want to sound intellectual. They want to show that Egypt, old kingdom is what Egypt is, right? So it's a fancy that writers. It's a craft. It's a skill. So most of the traditional about the old kingdom are monuments of the rich, like pyramids and tombs. So pyramids were made for the rich. Tombs were made for the rich when they died. Right? Pyramids were made for the very powerful, the pharaohs, etc. Then let's go to A, but this does not mean that death was Egyptians' only preoccupation. Okay, this sounds okay. Where do we fit in B? Even papyri come mainly from pyramid temples. Now, papyri is the plural of papyrus. So, you are aware that old civilizations used some kind of a paper made from leaves and stuff, and then they wrote things or drew things. Like Egyptians had this hieroglyphics, that pictorial, phonetic kind of writing, right? So, even the word even shows focusing, intensifying effect. So, B cannot suddenly come at the end. So, what does B connect with? It connects with pyramid temple. So, pyramids. Where is pyramid mentioned? In C. So, most of our traditional sources of information about the Old Kingdom are monuments of the rich like pyramids and tombs. Even papyri, which is another traditional source of information, comes come plural. Papyri is plural of papyrus. Come mainly from pyramid temples. So C and B are connected. E, we know more about wealthy than ordinary people, not houses not preserved. Most of our traditional sources of information are pyramids and tombs, which are made for the rich, obviously. Even papyri comes from there. But this does not mean that death was Egyptians' only preoccupation. So A, can we start with A? Because A doesn't link with anything. But this does not mean. Now you can't start with a but. So here E is a good sentence to start with. So EDC make clear link and CB obviously are connected, right? So EDCBA, just the reverse order. And A is like a passing comment at the end. You see, so finally, after saying all this, कि रिच के बारे में पता है, पुअर का नहीं पता, क्योंकि ये रीजन है, मगर इसका ये मतलब नहीं कि इजिप्शियंस केवल डेथ के बारे में सोचते थे, वो और चीजों के बारे में भी सोचते थे, लाइक दे बिल्ड कैनाल्स, दे केम अप विद द फर्स्ट कॉइन सिस्टम, एटसेट्रा, राइट? So A is like a passing comment. He's finished his earlier point with EDCB, which are complete by themselves. A is a passing comment. So sometimes the writers end with a passing comment, as we have seen earlier. Okay, now we've come to the last question. We have seen throughout so far that sometimes starting sentence, concluding sentence, links, but finally, without RC, everything is inconclusive. It is RC that clinches the deal. RC that makes the connections permanent. So now we've got a last question. Let's have a look. Again, read the shorter options first. Much of their tropical rainforest homelands are being cleared to make way for oil palm. So there's obviously they're referring to somebody, some, let's say, orangutan you can see. So that species. The race is on to protect the 50% of orangutan that live outside of protected areas and find themselves living in the path of industry, machines, and chainsaws. So there are unprotected areas and where a lot of development is happening. So orangutans, all trees are cut, their normal place where they live, their normal habitat is being destroyed. So some race seems to be on to protect them. Then 5. Such a low birth rate makes it hard for the species to recover from sharp population declines. So birth rate कहाँ mentioned है? So if you glance, you see 4 में कहीं mentioned है. So let's see 4. Orangutans can live up to 50 years. Females don't start to produce until between 10 and 12 years old, and they give birth every 3 to 5 years at most. So that is a low birth rate, right? But it takes so long, so many years before they can again give another birth. So obviously 4 and 5 become a mandatory pair. Okay, now from where do we start? Let's look at one which we haven't read. The orangutan is the only great ape in Asia, once widespread across the continent, but today its range has shrunk to the threatened rain forests of Sumatra and Borneo in Southeast Asia, where they are critically endangered. So this obviously makes the best starting sentence, introducing orangutan, the only great ape, where once they were spread all over, let's say, uh, maybe Asia, right? But today they are limited to the threatened rainforests of these two places in Southeast Asia, and they are a critically endangered species. So you know wildlife, world wildlife, etc. So species are monitored and their actions are taken to preserve their populations, etc. Like the Project Tiger is such a big thing in India. So this is what's happening. So one is a good starting thing. After that, where do you go? So which where they are critically endangered. Let's start with 2. Much of their tropical homeland are being cleared to make way for this. Okay. The race is on to protect those living outside. Orangutans can live up to 50 years. So now, having introduced orangutan, probably after 1, 4 and 5 together, must talk about more about orangutans and give some information. So after 1, then 4 about the low birth rate, And then 5, such a low birth rate is hard for them to recover. So if their habitat is destroyed, it takes a long time for them to recover their population. So that is of relevance. So 1, 4, 5 go well together. And between 2 and 3, which could you end with? Could you end with 2, much of their being cleared? Or would you like to end the race is on to protect the 50% of orangutans that live outside of so and find themselves living in the path of this? So this race is on is more like at the end he's leaving you with a positive, optimistic thing that the race is on. The effort to protect this species, this critically endangered species, is on. So obviously now 3 makes the best concluding sentence. So here 1 obviously the best starting sentence, 3 the concluding sentence, and 4 and 5 come immediately after 1 because you must talk about the orangutan a little more and this talk about this birth rate, which is why they cannot recover, and much of their tropical rainforest homelands are being cleared for this purpose, and that is why the race is on to protect them. So 1, 4, 5, 2, 3. But why not 1, 2, 4, 5? So if you say orangutan is the only area shrunk to this where they are critically endangered, much of the tropical failand are being cleared to make way for this. Orangutans can live up to 50 years, female. So that doesn't make sense. You see, you can't put 1, 2, 4, 5. 4, 5 must come immediately after 1 and then so it's clear. 1, 4, 5, 2, 3. So this little bit of options in TITA, because options are not given, don't just go for the first thing that appeals to you. Try to see where else can maybe something fit in. So you need a piece of paper, you need, like when you do LR questions, to have slots there, that first this, second, so 5, let's say, slots. So in first possible 1, okay, or clear 1, and then 4, 5 as a pair can come in somewhere. So 4, 5 put on top somewhere that it can fit anywhere. So let's say you've got a LR question of arrange these students as per height or something, and then a lot of conditions given. So that's how you work it out, isn't it? From tallest to shortest. Similarly here, starting sentence to the end sentence. And there are only 5. In LR you have maybe so many things and so many conditions, right? So treat para jumbles as LR, but in LR the conditions are given. Here the conditions you have to figure out through RC and grammar, right? You have to say these two have to go together in this order. It can't be 5, 4, it has to be 4, 5. And it can come probably anywhere in between for the time being. Then as you read more relationship fits in. And then gradually by reading more and establishing more conditions, all 5 slot into their places. So please do RC. Treat parajumbles purely as an effort in RC. And if you can think like a writer, look at it from the point of view of a writer. How would a writer have, would he have started this with 3? No, he would have obviously started with 1. So what comes naturally to a writer? How would he introduce a topic? How will he, based on the 4, 5 sentences you're given out of them, which would he end with? Okay, and which are the natural links? So this is all I have to teach you about parajumbles. I have taken 15 examples because I didn't have much to teach you. So I said, let me do more examples and show the display, demonstrate the whole process, how your mind should work as you're doing parajumbles, in which you have seen so far that without reading comprehension, you will not be able to establish those links and you will fail. And in TITA, you never know what could be the answer. At least when you had options, you could kind of, rule out a few and then between two, struggle between two, right? Okay, so with this, we've come to a rather long session. Thank you very much.